So taxpayer money, United States dollars that are being remitted into Somalia in parts have been utilized or have fell into the hands of al-Shabaab. Do you think that's a correct assessment?
Yes, we have plenty of evidence of that, from money directly going to al-Shabaab, but then also indirectly because they take a cut of whatever gets sent to Somalia.
So you had the Somali community who on purpose was petitioning the state of Minnesota to lower the standards to be able to make sure that fraud cannot be caught. Is that correct?
Well, they wanted to keep the standard clear and convincing, which makes it harder to disqualify people.
So it makes it harder for them to be disqualified from wasting tax.
This is what it looks like when someone finally stops playing it safe. In the middle of that hearing, Byron Donalds didn't sugarcoat a single word. He went straight to the heart of the issue: taxpayer dollars, Minnesota state programs, and serious allegations that some of that money may have ended up in the hands of extremists overseas. He didn't hesitate. No political dance, no softened language. Just direct questions and hard facts. If you're tired of watching politicians dodge responsibility while your hard-earned money disappears into the system, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear shows exactly why accountability still matters.
Before we begin, I have a letter to submit for the record titled Collective Request for Congressional Oversight, Systematic Retaliation and Governance Failure at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Chairman, this letter was written by the whistleblowers and has been provided to the committee. I want to submit that for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Eric, first of all, thank you for your service to the state of Minnesota. I want to refer back to your commentary about a meeting where the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Minnesota, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, came and admonished these whistleblowers. Can you go into more detail about what was said in this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. So I don't have any more detail other than what I read into the record. Unfortunately, it was obviously a public meeting, and there were hundreds of DHS employees, so Department of Human Services employees there. It was a story that's been reported multiple times on the X page, but I don't have any more details than that, other than the fact that that wasn't the only time that she retaliated.
Do you think that the Lieutenant Governor was operating outside of the purview of Governor Walz?
So it's interesting, the timing, and it was before he ran as the vice president, and so she was completely almost tied at the hip with Governor Walz at that time in history.
I think it's important for people to understand that in virtually every state in the country, the lieutenant governor is essentially chosen by the governor, and so lieutenant governors typically do not operate outside of the purview of the governor. It's kind of their job to, play QB2, if you will, to the governor. So would it be clear to state that the lieutenant governor's comments trying to railroad whistleblowers, trying to demean whistleblowers and discourage whistleblowers was at the directive of Governor Walz?
You can definitely assume that, because, like I said, at that moment in time, up until the point where the governor ran for VP, she was seen at literally every press conference. She was in all the meetings. They were tied at the hip. They were always together. So if she was saying it, he had approved it. I'm certain of it.
Well, I guess you could say she's kind of a knucklehead too. Moving on, the list of programs in the fraud in Minnesota are rampant. You have the Child Care Assistance Program. You have the Feeding Our Future. You have the Housing Stabilization Services. You have the Early Intensive Development and Behavioral Intervention. You have Integrated Community Supports. Ms. Robbins, you're the chair of the investigative committee. The depth of fraud that you have seen, were there controls in place in the state of Minnesota that could have prevented this fraud? And were these controls ignored by the Walz administration and by the Department of Human Services?
Absolutely. So we have many whistleblower reports talking about how DHS undermined ability to strengthen internal controls. So, for example, there was an effort for the Child Care Assistance Program. They have a clear and convincing evidence standard to disqualify someone from being a provider, where all the other programs are a lower standard, preponderance of the evidence.